What happens when private cruelty becomes public evidence and a group chat joke turns into a courtroom exhibit? I thought mocking my husband's most vulnerable moments would stay between friends, but when the lawyer's office called and screenshots became exhibits, I realized my words had built the case that would destroy me. I'm Perpetua Hayes, and I deserve to feel wanted and desired completely. My husband Owen thinks quiet patience equals love, but it feels empty. I work as an administrative assistant at an insurance firm downtown here. I deserve passion, excitement, someone who makes me feel alive and beautiful. Tonight, I stood on our apartment balcony feeling the light rain mist. The evening air was cool and I had my phone in hand. Owen was inside reading to our daughter Mia before her bedtime routine. I opened the group chat with Vanessa and two other close friends. I started typing, letting my frustration pour out onto the screen fast. I wrote that Owen was too quick, that he never satisfied me. I said he always had performance issues and I was tired of it. I added that I was done pretending everything was fine at home. Then I typed the part that felt like power rushing through me. I said I had already found a replacement who could give me everything. I added laughing emojis and hit send before I could second guess. The responses pinged back within seconds, validating every word I had written. Vanessa sent laughing emojis and said I deserved so much better than this. Another friend asked if I was seeing someone new and exciting now. I typed back with a winking emoji and the word maybe in quotes. I felt powerful, seen, vindicated in a way I hadn't felt in months. Owen's quietness had always made me feel invisible and unwanted inside our marriage. Now I had proof that other people understood my frustration completely here. I stayed on the balcony for another 10 minutes reading their responses. The validation felt like oxygen after holding my breath for too long. When I finally went inside, Owen was still on the living room sofa. Mia was tucked into bed and he was scrolling his phone quietly. He looked up and asked if everything was okay with me tonight. I sighed and said I was fine, just tired from work stress. He asked if we could talk later about us, about the distance. I said there was nothing to talk about, that he was imagining problems. He stared at me for a long moment, then nodded and looked away. I felt irritation rise in my chest at his passive silence again. I scrolled my phone while he sat there, the distance between us obvious. Around 10:15 we went upstairs and I got ready for bed. Owen tried to start a conversation about our relationship and where we stood. I told him he was overthinking everything, that he was always too sensitive. He said he felt like we were drifting apart and wanted to understand. I turned my back to him and said I was exhausted tonight. He lay awake beside me and I could feel his tension radiating. I pretended to sleep, but I felt a small flicker of guilt. I pushed it down and told myself I had every right to feel. The next morning I woke up and went downstairs to the kitchen. Owen was already dressed and pouring coffee into two separate mugs carefully. One mug sat near the sink, the other on the far counter. I didn't notice the deliberate distance he had created between them then. He asked if I wanted breakfast, and I said I would grab lunch. The conversation felt hollow and I didn't have energy to fix it. I drove to work feeling lighter, like I had released something heavy. I checked the group chat again and saw more supportive messages waiting. Vanessa had written that I should do whatever makes me happy now. I felt validated and justified in every choice I had made recently. Meanwhile, Owen spent his morning off at home organising bills and paperwork. A calendar reminder popped up on his laptop screen that read something. He dismissed it quickly before our daughter Mia ran in asking for help. A thin folder labelled medical sat beside him on the desk surface. It looked thicker than medical bills usually are, but I didn't see it. He closed the folder and locked the desk drawer as Mia climbed. That evening I changed my phone password while Owen was in the room. I said I had been getting spam and wanted better security now. He glanced over but said absolutely nothing, which felt strange to me. His stillness felt heavier than any question he could have asked aloud. Later, I left my phone on the bathroom counter while I showered. Owen walked past and the screen lit up with a notification suddenly. A preview from the group chat appeared with a friend's name visible. The message read something about Troy and included a fire emoji brightly. The name Troy hung in the air like a question mark burning. Owen's jaw tightened, but he walked away without saying a single word. The next morning, his phone alarm went off with a reminder label. It read, "Meeting personnel," and showed a time of 11 a.m. clearly. I asked where he was going and what the meeting was about. He said it was just an errand, nothing important or worth discussing. I didn't believe him, but I didn't know what to say next. He left with a small notebook tucked under his arm carefully and quietly. His expression was completely unreadable, blank, and distant in a way I recognized. When he returned 2 hours later, he seemed calmer than before, almost cold. He poured himself tea, sat at the kitchen table, and spoke calmly. He said we needed to start splitting household bills more clearly. I stared at him, confused by the sudden shift in his tone. He wasn't asking me to explain myself or begging for reconciliation anymore. He was planning around me like I was already gone from here. I felt a chill run down my spine that I couldn't fully explain. He finished his tea, rinsed the cup, and went upstairs without another word. I sat in the kitchen as the evening light faded to darkness. For the first time, I realized Owen had stopped fighting for us, and that terrified me more than anything else possibly could have done. The following week, I joined a gym near my office building downtown. I told Owen I needed to focus on my health and wellness. He said that was good and he was glad I was taking care. His support felt hollow, like he didn't really care what I did anymore. I started going during my lunch breaks 3 times each week regularly. That's where I met Troy Ashford, a personal trainer who worked there. He was muscular, confident, and paid attention to me in ways Owen never did. He noticed my form, complimented my effort, made me feel seen and attractive. Our conversations started casual but quickly became more personal and intimate over time. He would lean close when correcting my posture, his hand lingering on me. I felt a thrill every time he smiled or said my name. One afternoon in the gym locker room after a training session together, Troy whispered a compliment about how strong I looked and how impressive it was. I laughed and touched his arm, feeling the rush of attention. Another woman in the locker room was changing nearby and watching us. Her name was Sarah, and she knew Martin, a mutual friend of ours. Sarah's expression shifted from neutral to disapproving as she watched our interaction. I didn't notice her staring or realize she recognized me at all. Troy asked if I wanted to grab a smoothie sometime outside the gym. I said maybe, knowing full well what that invitation really meant for us. Back at the office that afternoon, I told Vanessa about Troy during break. We sat at our desks in the open-plan office, gossiping quietly. I joked that Troy knew exactly how to handle me, unlike Owen. Vanessa laughed loudly and added her own comments about men and effort. A manager walking past our desks paused for just a brief moment. Her expression was unreadable, but something in her eyes shifted before she continued. I didn't think anything of it at the time, didn't realize it mattered. That evening, Owen asked how my gym sessions were going so far. I said they were great, that I was finally feeling strong and confident. He asked who my trainer was and I said his name was Troy. I added that Troy was very professional and knew what he was doing. Owen nodded slowly, watching my face with an expression I couldn't read. He didn't ask more questions, but his silence felt heavier than usual somehow. That night, I went to bed before Owen came upstairs to sleep. Around 2 in the morning, I woke briefly and noticed Owen wasn't there. I assumed he had fallen asleep on the couch watching something boring. In truth, he was wide awake in the guest room staring at nothing. He couldn't sleep because his mind was racing with suspicions and questions. He had come upstairs earlier and found my phone unlocked on the nightstand. He picked it up carefully and opened the group chat I forgot. He read every message from the beginning, every cruel joke and comment. He read the mockery, the explicit details, the mention of Troy's name. His hands shook as he took a photo of the screen carefully. He placed my phone back exactly where it had been sitting before. The next morning he was already dressed and making coffee when I woke up. I asked if he had slept okay and he said he slept fine. His tone was flat and emotionless, completely different from before now. I felt a small flicker of unease, but I brushed it off. Later that day, Owen drove to Martin's house after work for a visit. Martin told him that someone had mentioned seeing me with a man. He said it was at the gym and it looked friendly, maybe too friendly. Martin said it might be nothing, but he thought Owen should know. Owen thanked him calmly and said he would look into it soon. Martin said he was there if Owen needed anything at all going forward. That night, Owen checked our joint credit card statement online at home. He saw charges at a hotel bar downtown on several different dates. The times matched nights when I said I was working late or overtime. The amounts were small, but they formed a consistent pattern over weeks. He took screenshots of every transaction and saved them in a hidden folder. The next morning, I found Owen at the kitchen table with his laptop. A spreadsheet was visible on the screen showing columns of dates and numbers. I asked what he was doing and he said tracking expenses for taxes. I didn't believe him, but I had no proof he was lying either. He closed the laptop and left for work without saying anything more today. His car was parked facing the street, as if ready to leave. Later that day, Vanessa pulled me aside at work looking worried and nervous. She said a manager had been asking questions about inappropriate workplace conversations recently. My stomach dropped and I felt panic rising in my chest fast. Vanessa said we should be more careful about what we say here. I texted Troy asking to meet and talk soon about everything happening. He responded hours later with a casual sure when questioned that felt distant. I realized he wasn't as invested or serious as I had thought. That evening, Owen moved a stack of his clothes into the guest room. I asked why he was doing that and what it meant exactly. He said he had been restless at night and didn't want to disturb me. I watched him close the guest room door behind him with finality. For the first time, I felt the ground shifting beneath my feet. Owen was no longer asking questions or demanding answers from me about anything. He was simply pulling away, quietly and methodically without any drama or anger. The next morning I woke up alone and the house felt colder. Owen's coffee mug sat on one counter, mine on the other side. The distance between them felt symbolic of something bigger happening between us. I tried to tell myself everything was fine, that I was in control, but a small voice inside me whispered that I had lost something. I ignored that voice and checked my phone for messages from Troy. He hadn't texted back since yesterday and I felt the first stirrings. I told myself he was just busy, that everything would be fine. But the doubt lingered in the back of my mind all day. That evening, Owen sat at his desk in the home office. I walked past and saw browser tabs open on his laptop screen. One tab showed storage options, another showed notary services near our location here. He minimized the screen the moment he noticed me standing in the doorway. I asked what he was working on so late at night now. He said it was just work stuff, nothing I needed to worry about. His voice was calm, but his eyes were distant and cold somehow. I walked away feeling more unsettled than I had felt in weeks. Later that night, I heard Owen on the phone in the hallway. His voice was low and I couldn't make out the words clearly. I pressed my ear to the guest room door but heard only silence. When he finally came out, he looked at me without expression or emotion. He said goodnight and walked past me like I wasn't even there. I stood alone in the hallway feeling invisible in my own home. The next morning, Owen's phone alarm went off with a label I glimpsed. I read something about a drop-off at 7:15 a.m. today. I demanded to know where he was going so early this morning. He said it was personal and he would be back soon enough. I watched from the window as he drove away with a folder. When he returned an hour later, he was different, colder, more resolved somehow. He told me we needed to start making separate plans for weekends. I asked what that meant, and he said I would understand soon. He walked to the guest room and closed the door with finality. I heard the lock click and realized I had lost all control. Saturday evening arrived and we had a family dinner to attend together. It was Derek's wife's birthday celebration at a family restaurant downtown nearby. The restaurant had a private dining room reserved for extended family and friends. I dressed carefully and put on my best confident smile before we left. Owen drove in complete silence with Mia singing softly in the back seat. When we arrived, the room was already filled with people talking loudly. Derek and his wife greeted us at the door with warm hugs. Brenda, Owen's mother, was already seated at the long table with others. My sister Celia was there too, along with my mother Joyce nearby. Martin and his wife sat at the far end talking with friends. The atmosphere felt warm and celebratory, at least at the beginning of it. I poured myself a glass of wine and started drinking faster than usual. Owen sat across from me and barely made eye contact the entire time. I felt frustrated by his coldness and the way he seemed distant. Around 7:30, someone at the table made a joke about marriage. They said marriage was all about compromise and learning to laugh together. I felt emboldened by the wine and the audience around me now. I laughed loudly and said, well, some of us compromise more than others. I added that Owen here thinks 2 minutes counts as real effort. The table went completely silent and every face turned toward me instantly. Owen's face was blank, showing no emotion, no reaction, nothing at all. Derek stared at me in disbelief, his mouth slightly open in shock. Brenda's expression turned to stone and her lips pressed into a thin line. Celia whispered, "Oh my God, Perpetua, what the hell are you doing?" I laughed nervously and said it was just a joke that everyone needed. But no one laughed with me, no one smiled, no one spoke. Owen stood up slowly and calmly excused himself to the restroom outside. The silence at the table was deafening and I felt everyone's judgment. Derek pushed his chair back and followed Owen out into the hallway. Brenda shook her head and looked away from me with disgust visible. Celia leaned over and hissed that I had crossed a line badly. My mother Joyce looked embarrassed and stared down at her plate silently. I tried to act normal, tried to laugh it off again. But the damage was done and the atmosphere had completely changed now. In the hallway, Derek found Owen standing alone near the restroom door. Derek asked if he was okay and Owen said he was fine. Derek said Perpetua had crossed a line and that was cruel behavior. Owen said he knew that he was used to it by now. Derek said if Owen needed help or support, he was there always. Owen thanked him quietly and walked back to the table with composure. The rest of the dinner was unbearably tense and uncomfortable for everyone there. People tried to make small talk, but it felt forced and hollow. Mia asked why everyone was so quiet and not talking much anymore. Owen said they were just tired and it was getting late tonight. He took Mia outside to wait for the car away from everyone. I tried to talk to Celia, but she turned away from me. Brenda didn't look at me once for the rest of the evening. The car ride home was silent except for the sound of tires. I tried to downplay the incident and said everyone was being dramatic. Owen didn't respond, didn't argue, didn't even look at me once tonight. When we got home, he went straight to the guest room again. He locked the door and I stood outside feeling shut out completely. The next morning I woke up feeling anxious and restless about everything. I texted Troy asking if he wanted to meet for a walk. He agreed and we met at the riverside embankment around 10 a.m. The path was quiet and the water was calm and peaceful looking. I started complaining about the dinner and how Owen's family overreacted badly. Troy listened, but his expression was distant and uninterested in my problems. He said it all sounded really messy and complicated for him. I tried to reassure him that it was just a temporary family drama. He shook his head and said he didn't want drama in his life. He said maybe we should cool things off for a while now. I felt panic rising in my chest and tried to convince him, but he was already pulling away emotionally and I could feel it. He said he would text me later, but his tone said otherwise. I walked back to my car alone, feeling everything slipping through my fingers. That afternoon, Brenda called Owen and said she was taking Mia overnight. She said she couldn't ignore what had happened at the dinner table. Owen agreed without hesitation and thanked her for her support and help. When I learned Mia was staying with Brenda, I was furious immediately. I called Brenda and demanded to know why she took Mia away. Brenda said calmly that I needed to think about my actions carefully. She said she would not let Mia witness more cruelty and disrespect. I hung up shaking with anger and feeling completely cornered by everyone. That evening, Owen sat on the balcony alone with his phone nearby. I watched from inside as a notification flashed on his screen briefly. It reads files uploaded successfully before disappearing from view completely now. I couldn't make out the details, but I felt dread creeping in. Owen's phone was always near him now, always charged, always face down. He kept it close like it held secrets I wasn't allowed to see. Monday morning his phone alarm went off labelled drop-off 7:15. He left early with a small folder tucked under his arm carefully. I demanded to know where he was going so early this morning. He said it was personal business and he would be back soon. I watched from the window as he drove away with purpose. When he returned an hour later, his demeanour had changed completely and drastically. He was colder, more resolved, more distant than I had ever seen. He told me we needed to start making separate plans for weekends. I asked what he meant by that and why he was acting. He said I would understand soon enough and walked to the guest room. He closed the door and I heard the lock click with finality. I stood in the hallway feeling like I had lost all control. Owen was no longer reacting to my provocations or engaging with my drama. He was simply moving forward with some plan I couldn't see yet. That night I tried calling Troy again, but he didn't answer. I texted him and waited, but no response came back at all. I checked his social media and realised he had blocked me completely. The panic I felt earlier turned into full-blown fear and desperation. I had pushed Owen away, and now Troy was gone too. My friends were distancing themselves and my family was ashamed of me. I sat on the balcony where I had typed that group chat. I realised I had set something in motion I couldn't stop now. The validation I felt weeks ago had turned into isolation and shame. I tried to convince myself everything would be fine, eventually and soon. But deep down, I knew something had shifted that couldn't be undone. Owen was no longer the passive husband I thought I could control. He was someone else now, someone I didn't recognise or understand anymore. And that terrified me more than anything else in my entire life. Sunday afternoon, Brenda called and said she wanted a family meeting today. She said everyone needed to sit down and address what was happening. I felt dread in my stomach, but I agreed to come over. Owen drove us to Brenda's house in complete silence as usual now. Mia was already there playing in the backyard with her grandmother's help. When we walked inside, the living room was filled with family members. Derek and his wife sat on one side, Celia on the other. My mother Joyce sat near the window looking uncomfortable and nervous about it. Martin was there too, standing near the doorway with his arms crossed. The tension in the room was thick and I could barely breathe. Brenda gestured for us to sit, and everyone's eyes followed me closely. She asked me to explain myself and what I was thinking lately. I said I was joking at the dinner, that everyone was overreacting. Derek shook his head and said it wasn't a joke at all. He said it was public humiliation and cruelty in front of everyone. Celia leaned forward and said she had heard about the group chat. My face went white and I felt my heart pounding in my chest. Celia said Vanessa had shown her screenshots of the messages I sent. I stammered that those were private vents, just frustration talking out loud. Celia said they were cruel and calculated, not just innocent venting at all. She said I had deliberately humiliated Owen in writing and in public. I tried to defend myself, but my words sounded hollow even to me. Brenda said she had always tried to be fair to both of us. She said she welcomed me into the family and treated me like family. But she said she could not ignore cruelty and deliberate harm anymore. I said Owen had emotionally neglected me for years, and I was unhappy. Derek said that didn't justify what I had done to him publicly. He said there were ways to address problems without cruelty and mockery. I felt cornered and attacked from every side of the room now. Then Mia walked in from the backyard holding a juice box carefully. She looked around at all the serious faces and felt the tension. She walked over to Owen and climbed into his lap for safety. Then she looked up at me with big, confused eyes full of worry. She asked why I said mean things about Daddy at the restaurant. She asked if that meant Mommy and Daddy were getting a divorce. The room froze and no one breathed or spoke for several seconds. Owen hugged Mia tightly and said they were figuring things out together. He said sometimes adults have hard conversations, but she was always loved. I tried to reach for Mia, but she pulled away from me. She buried her face in Owen's chest and wouldn't look at me. I felt my heart breaking, but I didn't know what to say. Brenda's voice cut through the silence with finality and authority now clearly. She said she could not ignore what had happened anymore at all. She said if I continued down this path, she would support Owen. She said she would support him emotionally, logistically, and legally if it came. I accused her of being unfair and taking sides without hearing me. Brenda said fairness ended when I chose cruelty over respect and decency. Joyce, my mother, tried to offer a weak defense of me. She said I had been unhappy and maybe needed understanding and help, but her voice trailed off and she looked embarrassed saying it aloud. Celia shook her head and said she was embarrassed to be related. She said she couldn't defend my actions anymore to anyone who asked. Derek said Owen had shown incredible patience and I had repaid it. He said I had shown my true character, and it wasn't good. The meeting ended with everyone leaving in silence and heavy tension lingering. Owen carried Mia to the car and buckled her in gently and carefully. I followed behind, feeling completely defeated and isolated from everyone I knew. The car ride home was silent except for Mia's soft breathing. She had fallen asleep in the back seat, exhausted from the emotional day. I tried to speak, but Owen held up his hand to stop me. He said we would talk later, but not in front of Mia. When we got home, he carried Mia inside and put her to bed. I sat on the couch feeling numb and lost in my thoughts. Around 11 that night, I heard noise from the parking garage below. I went down and found Owen packing files into his car trunk. Folders labelled home, auto, and bank were stacked neatly inside a box. I asked what he was doing and why he was packing things. He said he was organising important documents for safekeeping and security purposes. His phone was in his hand, as always, never far away now. A reminder lit up the screen briefly before he dismissed it fast. I saw the words meeting personal and a time of 8:45. I demanded to know what meeting he had scheduled for tomorrow morning. He closed the trunk and walked past me without answering at all. I followed him back inside and tried to start another conversation again. He said he was tired and needed to sleep tonight. He went to the guest room and closed the door behind him. I stood outside and knocked, but he didn't answer or open it. The next morning, Owen woke before dawn as he had been lately. I found 2 coffee mugs sitting on opposite counters, neither one touched. A sticky note was stuck to the fridge reading "Bring documents Tuesday." I asked what documents he was talking about and why he needed them. He said they were for work and nothing I needed to worry about. But his tone was final and dismissive, not defensive or apologetic anymore. He kissed Mia goodbye and left without looking back at me once. The door closed with a soft click that felt like an ending. I stood in the kitchen feeling the walls closing in around me. That evening, Owen moved the last of his clothes to the guest room. He set up a completely separate routine with different wake times and meals. I tried to start a conversation, but he was polite and distant. He said we needed to discuss logistics like schedules, bills, and Mia's school. I asked if he was giving up on us and our marriage. He said he was being realistic about where things stood right now. He said some things couldn't be fixed once they were broken badly. I realized he had stopped trying to fix the marriage completely now. He was planning for what came after, for a life without me. His calmness felt like a threat I couldn't name or understand fully. That night, I lay awake in our bed, alone and cold. I heard Owen moving around in the guest room down the hall. I wondered what he was doing, what he was planning, what came next. I felt fear creeping in, replacing the confidence I had felt before. I had pushed him away, thinking he was weak and passive forever. But now I realized he wasn't weak, he was just patient and strategic, and that patience had run out completely and finally now, at last. The next morning I tried to apologize, but he wasn't interested anymore. He said apologies didn't change what had been said and done publicly. He said words had consequences and actions had consequences too, always. He left for work and I sat alone in the apartment. I tried calling Vanessa, but she didn't answer her phone at all. I tried texting my mother, but she responded with short, cold messages. I checked Troy's social media and saw he had moved on already. I was completely alone with no one left to turn to. And I knew deep down that I had done this to myself. I had mocked and humiliated the one person who had been loyal, and now I was paying the price for every cruel word spoken. That evening, I tried to confront Owen about everything happening between us. I found him sitting on the living room sofa with his laptop open. I said we needed to talk about ourselves and fix this situation. He looked up and said there was nothing left to talk about. I said we could still fix this if we both tried harder. He said some things couldn't be fixed once they were broken completely. I asked if he was seeing someone else, throwing accusations at him. He said no, but he was protecting himself now from further harm. His tone was final and I felt my controls slipping away fast. The next morning I went downstairs and found Owen at the table. His laptop showed a desktop file tree with folders I didn't recognize. Archive evidence, archive messages, archive financials were visible on the screen clearly. I demanded to know what he was working on so early. He said he was organizing files for personal records and documentation purposes. I said I had a right to see what he was doing. He closed the laptop and said it was private, none of my business. I sat alone that evening staring at the legal documents spread across the table. The 10-day deadline felt like a noose tightening around my neck slowly. I could issue a public retraction and apology admitting I was wrong, or I could refuse and face a court battle I couldn't win. Either way, I had lost everything that mattered to me in life. My reputation was destroyed, my marriage was over, my family was ashamed. Owen had won without ever raising his voice or losing his composure. He had simply documented the truth and let my own words condemn me. I had mocked him for being too quick, never satisfying me enough. Now those words were exhibited in a legal complaint against me personally. I had said I found a replacement who could give me more. That replacement had blocked me and Owen had replaced me with dignity. The irony wasn't lost on me as I sat there alone. I picked up my phone and opened a blank message to Owen. I started typing an apology, but the words felt empty and meaningless. I deleted it and put the phone down knowing it was over. The hearing was set and the evidence was clear and undeniable completely. I thought I could humiliate him and face no consequences at all. I was wrong and now I understand that words always have power,